podcast with host Dr. Teresa Larson. I'm here with the Tony Blauer. Welcome, Tony.
Hey, how are you?
Good. We are in like opposite countries right now. Like he's in North County, San Diego, and I am near downtown. So we're basically on the opposite side of the country.
Right. I think that's not how it works, but I think so.
It's so far though, Tony. Like driving up there, it's about an hour. It's kind of far.
Yeah. I guess for locals, that's far. You know, when I started my business, like in the 90s doing seminars, I couldn't afford airplanes. And I would literally drive to Florida to go teach from Montreal. Now I used to live like in Canada. So I mean,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's where you met is that where you met your wife?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. You have a beautiful wife too.
Thank you.
Tell her hello for me.
I shall.
Okay. So Tony and I worked with CrossFit for a few years when I first started my PT practice on the movement and mobility course with Kelly Starrett. And I'd heard about Tony there because Tony teaches the CrossFit Defense. Is it still called CrossFit Defense or has it changed names?
It's changed. It's
okay.
When we first started, just a little insert, when we first started back in 2006, 2007, I would do these Be Your Own Bodyguard. It was like a one-day thing. And then it morphed into the CrossFit Defense stuff, which was a longer course. And then we found out people really just wanted the one-day, like intensive, like make me safe. And so right. we went back to Be Your Own Bodyguard.
Okay. I like it. So I heard about you through just the CrossFit Network. And then a couple of years ago, had a chance to work with you and learn more about you and just, and also like the work you do and why you do it. So I remember having breakfast with you at the Barbell Shrugged Breakfast and you telling a story about a woman who you had trained who told you a story about her almost rape experience. Mm-hmm. And that really stood out in my mind because one, being a woman from the military where sexual assault is unfortunately common. It's common in our society anyway.
Right.
Sadly, that was a really powerful story. And so I want to dig into the why behind what you do today, Tony, but I know that also when we worked together, you were overcoming some challenges physically that kind of changed the way you had to do your work. And you've done it beautifully. Like the transition I've seen over the last couple of years have been awesome. But I want people to listen to that story because the things that you dealt with, one of them is not so common. One of them is more common than we'd like. But unfortunately, many people in society, and those of you listening, because most people listening are going to be having overcome something or dealing with something currently, can really attach to diagnoses and these like medical things that they're told they have. And it can really like take them out of doing what they love. And it doesn't have to. And so I'd like to dive into that journey today of how you got this diagnosis, but like, all right, how are you going to continue crushing it? Because you totally can. And you totally have. So, but I got a chance to work with Tony in the physical therapy realm, but also like I've run into him on a number of occasions, Clever Talks, when we saw Marcus Luttrell give his talk and Joe DeSena. That was rad, a rad experience. And then I feel like I ran into you.
Art of Breath.
Yes, Art of Breath. Yes,
right.
that was a great workshop with Brian McKenzie and Kenny Kane and Jill Miller. That was a pretty rad experience. And I've been using the superventilation a lot more in my practice now. So, Tony, first of all, before we even get into this whole story, here's just an icebreaker. Because you're doing you CrossFit, you have Spear Systems, which is yours. So Blauer Spear Systems, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And you run a CrossFit now self-defense.
Yeah, Be Your Own Bodyguard.
Be Your Own Bodyguard. Okay, so when you are on an airplane flying and someone asks you what you do, what do you tell them?
I usually don't, because it turns into a seminar. when we start talking about it. And it's not that I don't want to help people. It's just that, as you know, you only have so much energy before you burn yourself out, and you're done. And I've been cautioned about that for years by different mentors. Take care of yourself, because I'm always going. And then when you need to, if you said to me, hey, I want you to do this little mobility protocol, it'll help your low back every morning. I go, I'm too tired. I'm too busy. I'm answering emails. I'm taking care of my kids. I'm doing it. And we don't understand that proverbial, it's not even that, it's overused, the work-life balance, but there's got to be this really selfish, I got to take care of myself or I can't take care of other people, which ironically and serendipitously is what the whole Be Your Own Bodyguard metaphor is about, is that if someone tried to attack you solo, you might be overcome with fear, go fetal, lie down, let something happen. But if you saw somebody approaching your son, you would go crazy.
Right.
And so this reframe in the Be Your Own Bodyguard moment is there's a really cool story around it. But the gist of it is we immerse people in this visualized scenario where they all go and they freeze and they hesitate, and then literally 60 seconds later I add a new dynamic, like the most important person in your life. It could be your kid, could be your dog, could be your mom, and they immediately, the same group will go, nobody would fucking touch my grandmother. I'll rip their heart out. Can I swear on your show?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Go for it.
Too late, right? But so but it's like in this 60 seconds, I'll have like a group of ladies going, how dare you put that image in my head? I'll kill anyone who tries to harm my family, my kids. I'll stop them all and I'll go, hey, 60 seconds ago, you were frozen with fear. And now 60 seconds later, you're ripping someone's heart out. Where did you get your black belt in 60 seconds? What people realize through a change in like just neuroscience, like changing, their relationship to courage and discourage and understanding this like simple switch in the brain, that they go from just total fear to total like aggression and protective, and if they're not even thinking about technique, they're thinking about movement, they're thinking about protection. And so this big epiphany for them is, we say, hey, what did you see yourself doing to protect your family that you don't see yourself doing to protect yourself? And in that moment, people realize that self-defense is about our definition in our mind. And it's really about procrastination, because, and then there's so many like success stories like that, but I mean, that's a whole self-defense talk we'll have another time, but it's it's funny because you just asked me a question, like this could be us on a flight. And now you're here and you're asking me the next question. And I've done that literally where I needed to sleep for 5 hours on a flight, and I did a 5-hour seminar to a stranger.
Right.
And then sometimes it's great because I'm working on new material or new ideas and connections. And amazingly, and I'm going to inject this in here because I've written about this on a couple of blogs, but there's a flight story. I was taking a red-eye flight, and I was coming back from the funeral in LA. I was living in California. I zipped in, I zipped out. I wasn't in a good mood, right? A good friend of mine passed away. Yeah. And I'm sitting there, and this was back in the day when it was like the Sony Discman, right? Yeah. Do you remember that, right? Some of your listeners are going, what is that? I'll Google that. I used to read a lot more than I do now, but I was a voracious reader, but there was no iPads, back then. So I had 3 books and a Sony Discman, and the seat beside me was empty. And I was like, oh my God, it's like 10:55 and the doors are getting ready to close. And all of a sudden this flight attendant comes like flying through the door, like sweating. Oh my God. And she comes over and I'm like, no. And she comes over to the seat because I know she's not working the flight. Yeah. And she says, I'm sitting there. And she's still in her uniform. She goes, oh my God, I thought I was going to miss this flight. This isn't my hub. My hub is here. And I didn't want to stay overnight. I've been on the road. And I realized she's adrenalized and that she's going to talk and I'm moving my stuff. And she goes, so obviously, and she points at her name tag. She goes, I'm a flight attendant. What do you do? And you've seen how I live in jeans and a t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, jeans and t-shirt, and this is a true story, on an airplane about doing seminars. And she goes, "So what do you do?" And we're just starting to taxi.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what can I say that will just stop this conversation cold? So I looked at her and I go, life insurance. I'm a life insurance salesman. Thinking like, who the hell wants to talk about that just as you're getting on a plane, right?
Yeah.
And she looks at me and she looks me up and down. She goes, "No, you're not. I can tell." And I go, "Okay, you got me. I'm a life extension insurance salesman." And she goes, "Life extension insurance? What? I've never heard of that. What is that?" I go, "I teach self-defense." Like I was trying to be cute, life extension. She goes, "Oh my," she says, "Oh my God, I always wanted to learn how to defend myself." And I look at her and I go, "No, you didn't." She goes, "I beg your pardon." I go, "People who always want to do things, do those things."
Mm-hmm.
I think what you meant to say is you always wanted to know how to never be near a situation where you might have to defend yourself. And she goes, "Oh my God, yes." Right. And I ended up talking to her for hours until we both fell asleep at 2 a.m. But it was, the way I look at the whole self-defense thing is a little bit different.
Well, first of all, the message you have resonates with me, Tony. Like the lead yourself first. It's like when you're on an airplane, what do they tell you? To put your mask on first before you put it on your kid. And
Right.
like people don't think that way. They think of protecting everyone else. And that in a period of my time, many of the listeners have heard my story, but I was really good at taking care of others, not myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I hit a wall. And but the message of lead you first is something that is a big part of when I do talks and just the work I do on myself every day, because I have a little one and I am a busy woman running a business.
Right.
I will hit a wall if I don't slow down and have slow periods of my day. And on the airplane, so I like that as a question for you, because I can imagine the ways it would go with certain people. Like for me, if I say I'm a PT, someone will say, "Oh man,
My shoulder. Yeah.
just like my great aunt has this. Can you tell me what I can do to help her?" That's why I created online programs. It was like, yeah, check out this link. All right, good night.
Yeah.
Because I'm an introvert. I need that space.
Yeah.
Topographer. Maybe topographer is a better, nobody knows what the fuck that is. So
right. Yeah. It's weird, and it's easy these days to be an introvert because people are so myopic and walking around with their phones. And so, it's easier than it used to be because, and of course it depends on where you are, but, yeah, I travel so much and I've been on the road, like nonstop since 1993. I mean, one year I think I was on the road 260 days. And, it's one thing for you, like you're deployed, but you're at a base, right? So this is where you get coffee, and I'm not comparing like that, but people hear my schedule and they're like, "Oh my God, you went here, you went here, you went here." And I went, "No, I went to that airport. And then I sat in traffic and went to that hotel. And then I went to this training center, and I did not see that city or really experience their culture other than maybe a restaurant one night." So, it's and I'm not complaining. I love traveling, but you made me think about like hitting that wall. We have all these metaphors in mental health and physical health, and this really is the golden era of taking care of yourself in terms of what people are discovering, from plasticity to like foam rollers, right? When I grew up, I'm 58 now. When I grew up and we were training in the 70s and 80s, like our warm up was punching each other in the face. It's like you put your gloves on and you just started your training.
Sounds like my upbringing.
Yeah. A little bit like mine, the 60s and the 70s. Things were a little bit different,
Yeah.
We didn't have crying booths on campus and there's shit like that. Holy Christ. Anyways,
Well, so traveling is people with the work you do, I mean, I've had glimpses of it. I was obviously the Marine Corps opened up another element of me of just being on the go, but then also just traveling, teaching seminars, like you are on the go all the time.
Yeah.
And I was just doing it part-time, like once a month. And I was like, oh my gosh, traveling was fun, but it's not so sexy sometimes. Like hanging out in airports with your favorite people, favorite crowds of people, eating out, it can be
Right.
challenging. And so,
Yeah. I was going to say that the hardest thing about travel is the fact that you're either standing around or sitting around, so you're not really moving. And then your food choices, certainly back when I was doing it, like now you can go to, a Starbucks and there's at least, a pseudo healthy, like there's a protein plate now,
yeah, I love that.
I grew up, it's so funny. Like I'd like to think I'm pseudo healthy, but who knows? But I would eat like a box of Captain Crunch, like bowls of it I just loved it. So things have changed. And now my kids will, I'll be there going, hey, protein, fat, carbs. I'd like to see a different blend there. And I'm like this old cantankerous old man trying to.
I think that's just that this is the era we're in. Growing up, I was Lucky Charms, like that was a healthy cereal, and then gobs of spaghetti with butter every night, and it was a different version. Like my dad raised us, so it was like one version of spaghetti on Monday, a different version on Tuesday, with a little bit extra added to the extra sauce that we had the night before. It was, burnt pizza. I know. Okay, so we could probably talk for hours about the work you do, to be honest. Like the work you do is amazing. And I want everyone listening we'll have links to your courses in the show notes, and check out a course near you or go to one, because leading yourself first is about, if there was not an opportunity, if a situation came up where you had to defend yourself, you want to be ready for that, and prepared mentally and physically. Side story here real quick, Tony, because this just happened. You would have been proud, maybe. I was taking out the garbage. I live in a downtown neighborhood. I was taking out the garbage one day, like a week and a half ago, and this yoo-hoo was in our alley, and he was just standing there staring at me, and no one was home. It was just me, and I was getting ready to go meet a friend for coffee, and he like just stood and stared at me. I was like, "Can I help you?" And he was like, just looked down, and he had his dick out of his pants.
Wow.
Literally. So of course he was expecting to run off and be scared. But instead I threatened to cut off his dick with a knife and like basically grabbed my phone, ran and tried to catch him. I didn't know if he had a weapon, but I was just so angry that I wanted to threaten him somehow. But my voice just got louder and louder, full of obscenities, and just like, anyway, I won't say all the obscenities I told him, but I don't think he was expecting that kind of response of, are you effing kidding me?
Right.
I did end up calling the police, and just because we're in a neighborhood of kids and women and children, like douchebags like that shouldn't be walking around, but no one caught him. He ended up running into the canyon.
Yeah.
But I was proud of the response.
Do you want me to critique it?
Sure.
Listen, at the end of the day, like, here's the thing. And I just want to talk a little bit about the way I define self-defense. I define self-defense as your cognitive ability to choose safety. And choosing safety means I've now moved away from this danger, and I'm in a safer place. Ironically and sadly, sometimes choosing safety means you have to go through the danger, and you got to go, and that makes you safe.
Right.
And had you had the normal, societal embarrassed, oh my God, turn away, does he come back? Does he think, oh, that's the type of attention I want?
Yeah.
And we don't know all of this. Like, is he angry at you now? And now he wants to come back, right?
Yeah.
in terms of like the Zen metaphor of in the moment,
Yeah.
He disappeared and you were safe.
Right.
And so, like if you've got three philosophies of self-defense, what you did was effective, right? And someone else might have said, oh, you should have kicked him in the head, or you should have run away, whatever it is. What I want your listeners to understand and what you to understand is, you trust your gut. We call it the three I's: instincts, intuition, and intelligence. You've got to work with what your instincts and intuition tell you, and that's going to be the most primal, instinctive response right there. And that's what you did. And that was someone else. Like if we said, oh, I'm going to talk about Teresa's story in a seminar and inspire all these other women in the next seminar, I might say that to 10 of them, and they can't do it because they haven't gone through what you've gone through in life that gave you that assertive power. You might not have done that a year before your son was born. Right. You don't know like all the different things that have changed your emotional posture and your confrontation management skills. So you did a good job. You got rid of it, but it's like people ask me all the time, like going back to your airplane story where someone wants you diagnosed you, or somebody else who's not even there. Hey, what do you think this is? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like they're not even here, and you're asking. Is people always ask me, did I do the right thing? And I go, like, if you're not calling me from jail, or we're not communicating in a seance, you did the right thing. Right. So.
Well, so that leads into the next question in conversation with you, because the what happens, how you live your life, like how I've lived my life the last year, the things that have gone on, all helped me with that confrontation, whether I was completely did it correctly or not. Like maybe running after him, not knowing if he had a weapon, probably wasn't the most safe thing for me. However, with my background, that's what led me to that.
Sure.
Now for you, and I love the book by Sebastian Junger, Tribe. So when it talks about people who have gone through trauma, for example, guys and gals that are coming back from war, the way they have been able to, get over this post-traumatic stress or whatever trauma they dealt with is the community, having a community outside of the military once they get out, because that's what causes them to suffer, is this lack of tribe anymore, and this lack of the same kind of mutual experience of going through something really hard. Now, for civilians like us now, though, like they had the tribe before, they get out of the military, they don't have the tribe anymore, so they struggle. Anybody going through any hard experience, let's say not even war, but just maybe an injury, for example, the things that you've learned about your body, the things that you've already done in terms of recovery, like what you know about recovery, what you know about leading yourself first. Like you had an injury a couple years ago that changed you a little bit, how you had to work. And all of those skills you built to help yourself, did those things help you during this experience, is what I want to know. So like you teach people how to lead themselves first through self-defense. And you're also someone who's very into education, and you're doing breath work too, and very in tune with your body. You're taking care of yourself every day, doing functional fitness, doing CrossFit. What was it like? So can you tell us a little bit about your injury and what helped you through that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been an athlete my whole life. I started skiing when I was 1.5 years old. My parents were in the ski patrol, so I literally grew up on skis. I've gymnastics, wrestling, taekwondo, boxing, I cannot remember the last time I wasn't in pain. Just as a combative athlete, an aggressive, some of the falls I had skiing, where, cracked this, knocked out, I fell I wiped out in a downhill race and woke up, being put on a stretcher on my way to a hospital, to, getting knocked out boxing to broken nose, broken, like all this stuff.
Yeah.
So
You had multiple injuries.
What's that?
You had multiple injuries.
Yeah. So I've always had, and if you're a fighter, right, I spent, so I started like, I would like fanatic level martial arts when I was 13. And so from the time I was 13 to the time I was, well, even to today, but less so in the last 10 years, I was in this stance, right? I was always like in some sort of internally rotated position.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I did pull-ups, I wrecked myself,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so my posture now is so different than how it used to be. And that's an important lesson that we'll come back to, just in terms of your, neuroplasticity and your body. Your
Mm-hmm.
body wants to find, the proper alignment if you do the right things.
Right.
But at the same time, like I've had, torn bone lining, and so certain parts of my spine and my body, they're just wrecked from accidents. I say all of that because, every time I worked out hard and aggressively, I paid for a couple of days, but it was almost like my personality needed that intense workout. That was my life. And then I knew, okay, this is going to wreck me for a couple of days, but I got to do that. You mentioned the word wall a few times, hit a wall. Nobody drives into a wall on purpose, right? You're going too fast, right? And then all of a sudden there's a wall, and you don't have the stimulus response gap time to figure out what to do. And it takes life and the cliche, the wisdom of, I wish, we always say, youth is wasted on the young, and things like, oh, when we're older, we go, I wish I knew this when I was younger. And I'm like sharing things. I got a 26-year-old kid and a 21-year-old and a 16-year-old, and I'm telling them things now, but I'm doing it in a way that my parents never did, where they'll just say, here's a cliche, right? And I'll go, okay, thanks, Dad, bye. Where I'm trying to engage them in ways going, listen, I have a level of self-awareness that allows me to say this that my parents didn't, but you need to think about this, and you need to just start reflecting on this, and please save this text. And because I know we're going to get off this call or off this text or out of this conversation, and you're going to be thinking, yeah, I'm okay. Because people, like when you're 20 to 30, you think you're invincible, right? And that the laws of the universe don't apply to you. Mm-hmm. So that's how I remember that. Like I remember the way I used to train, the way I used to do stuff, and how fast my body bounced back from injury or whatever. So, all of you listening, you're in the golden era of prevention, of fixing, of just what we understand the body can do.
Recovery.
So leading to my injury, I always had to work around my injuries. And so one day I'm up at my buddy Ron Matthews' gym in Beverly Hills area, or Hollywood, CrossFit Lab. And I'm doing some back squats. And this is about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years ago. And I'm doing back squat, and all of a sudden I get this crazy cramping pain that shoots up from my trap right up into my head, to the point where, like, I think my head's going to blow up. The pressure. So I feel like I'm going to pass out. I pitch the weights and I grab onto the rack, and it dissipates really fast. So of course, like an idiot, I load up again, going, that was weird. Maybe I just was on a nerve or something, right? But it comes back again. I get really scared. My heart starts pounding. I'm like, it goes away. And I'm thinking, well, I'm always tight. I hold my stress like most people up here. I had a neck injury in 1986. I got kicked in the head, and I got a stinger, and I've had neck pain every day since 1986. And some days, and my threshold for pain is probably higher than most other people, just because of my career path. But there are days where I'd be like this, going, oh, I can't take this. Like, just, and you know this better than anybody, like the pain that you have right there might be scar tissue and an issue right there. But while you're trying to move away from that pain, you're actually changing how the rest of your body aligns and functions. And you're causing another pain or another problem somewhere else. And so that, yeah. And so I've got all of this shit going on. And about, I kind of stopped working out, just let my body just heal. And then about 2 weeks later, I was in Vegas at a conference, and I'm walking and I feel bilaterally both my hamstrings start to cramp, where like to the point where I'm like going, I can't fucking walk right now. And I'd have to stop and it would dissipate. And if I squatted, it would relieve some of the pressure. And it was making me nervous, but I'm a real pussy when it comes to like medical and shit like that. I'm like, I'm not going to a doctor. I don't know, this has to go away. Let me change my diet. Let me do.
Mm-hmm.
And it got worse, and it got worse to the point where, I'd go to walk down the stairs and like a leg would just lock up. And simultaneously it would be like this intense, sharp pain. It wasn't like a cramp,
Yeah.
And I'd have to grab the banister and, so I didn't fall down and break my neck. I couldn't walk. I couldn't, if I tried to run, my fingertips would go numb. It was insane. And, people are saying, dude, you need an MRI. You need an MRI. And I'm like, yeah. And I waited a few months before I did it because I was just so scared. And this other thing I want to, loop back in, when people think of me as teaching self-defense, the more important part of what I teach is the self-awareness related to internal self-defense, the detect, diffuse, defend, that the whole cycle of behavior, the neural circuitry, fear, understanding fear, we're not going to get into fights every day, physical fights with bad guys, but we are going to have a fight every day with traffic, with a person, with an employee,
Mm-hmm.
with customers. And I would always tell people, going back to the 80s, I'd say how you handle your day-to-day confrontation is going to determine how you handle the week and how you handle the month and the year in your life.
Yes.
And that's what confrontation management. So this is a much more holistic approach. My vehicle, my hook is the physical self-defense, but the transcendent value of it is to understand. And so here I am, a so-called fear management expert, sitting here scared. I know exactly what I need to do. And that's part of what I was saying when you told me your story about the flasher, is I never tell anyone this is the right or wrong thing to do. Is like, are you safe? You move, what can you learn from that? If it happened again, is your response going to be the same or different?
Right.
And so for me, had I gone for an MRI right away, or had I not, it wouldn't have changed the diagnosis.
Yeah.
But like anything else, you realize that because I'd only ever had an MRI once in my life for my neck years ago, it's like anything, you do a rep. So God forbid I needed an MRI again, it's not going to take me 3 months. It might take me a month.
Right.
And right. So what they discovered was really bad stenosis in 3 areas. And
which 3 areas did they find it?
It was my neck, in the middle of my back, and my low back near my hip.
Okay.
So the doctor in the hospital was like, "Oh, you need surgery. Like you need this, you need that, right?"
Right.
And I was like, "Oh my God!" And they're explaining what stenosis is, and
right.
and certain people can make things seem so scary, and the internet can make it so scary.
Yeah.
And what I decided to do was try to find more natural alternatives, and that if I needed to I was really measuring, okay, how much pain am I in, and what's my quality of life, and all of this stuff. And you were one of the people that I met and sought out and got advice from, and you shared with me some really cool little exercises and movement protocols to help mitigate the pain. And a buddy of mine, who, I don't know if you've had a chance to meet him, Erik Goodman.
Yeah, I got foundation training.
Yeah,
amazing work.
Yeah, so he was working on me about a month ago, and I was telling him, because when you're in pain, you are praying, you are hoping that the next person you talk to gives you a magic pill, right?
Yes.
And so So anytime I meet somebody, when I met you, I was like, okay, Teresa's going to fix me, you know? And the message is ultimately that, you know, you got to fix yourself.
Yes.
And that's a huge thing. But Erik's working on me one day, and I said,
Real quick, Tony, time out. Just give me
okay,
1 second.
go
We're going
for
to
it.
pick this back up. Don't worry, we'll edit that.
No problem. Everything okay?
Yeah, I had to plug in my computer.
Oh,
I do this in my garage because I have quiet.
right.
Okay, so Erik.
Yeah. So I mean, the message here was Erik's working on me, and you know, it's so funny because, and he's not like this, but just like I guess I am. It was like I was telling him that I was like seeing a couple other people, you know, and it's almost like I felt like I was telling my girlfriend, who I don't have, I'm married. Hey, just so you know, I'm seeing a couple other people, and he just said, you know, it's going to take a village, man. And like that metaphor of it's like not one method is going to fix you with everything you have going on. It's not like you had a dislocated finger and someone's okay, get out of here, you're good, you know?
Yes.
So yeah.
Well,
So go ahead.
well, I was gonna say that it's a very wise thing, you have a good practitioner when they say that,
Right.
because it's not just one person. That's what happens a lot in the medical industry. It's like the doctor
Right.
only gave you one thing, like surgery. Well, of course, that is very extreme
Right.
thing to do without offering other conservative things. Like people live, and I'll put some links to learning about stenosis in the show notes. But like, unfortunately, it is common. Like I also have it in
Sure.
my low back. And it doesn't have to be asymptomatic, but there is things, obviously at the height of when it actually started to flare up for you, it was already there and forming, but all of a sudden it was like, what was
Oh
the
yeah.
straw that broke the camel's back?
It was acute.
However, it takes, soft tissue work, joint work, postural work, and you can get help from multiple sources, but choose the conservative route first.
Yeah.
Listening, like never jump to surgery first. And that's kind of what pisses me off about Western medicine. And Erik is not, he's a very holistic practitioner, very great educator about how to move your spine like the way it should be moved. And teaching you ways to, like, he gives people flow kind of movement practices that they should be doing daily,
Right.
to keep their spines healthy. But again, like you still may need more hands-on, right? You still may need someone else, or you really like acupuncture. Well, then go for it. Acupuncture is a great way to parasympathetically down-regulate, get into that parasympathetic state if you can't already, right? So because you were in this heightened state of pain, having external help to get you there was needed.
That's the hardest thing is that the mind and the body is so complex that you don't know if it's your stress level and your limited work capacity and how intense you're trying to make something happen that's creating like an inner tension that's causing nerves to become inflamed. You don't know if it's postural, if there's a bone spur on something there's so many things, and you need to, and obviously in some cases, someone go, oh, your rib's out, and you get an adjustment and the pain goes away.
Right.
In this case here, it was like, and that's why I pre-briefed with I've been beating my body up for years, and so it was, I'm for somebody like you, I'm trying to think of the word to describe this. Like, oh my God, I get to work on this guy. He's got so many problems, right? And it's a nightmare at the same time, right? Because it's not like, I'm 20, everything's good. I fell off a bike and now, right, my hip's bugging me. And you go,
well,
oh.
Working with you though, so knowing a little bit about your background, you're coming in with this major spinal pain that's causing referred pain to the legs. But your background is you're very active. Like I look at, because pain is very subjective.
Right.
We have sensory fibers in our body, but we don't have pain fibers. So like, but pain exists. It's just everyone experiences it differently. So all of the things that you've done before then to take care of your body and your level of resilience was there. Like you probably knew the bullshit flag of the doctor saying surgery, like, yeah, no, like that's not first line of defense, bro, like, or lady, like what can I do to help myself get out of this in a conservative manner? So me working with you, I mean, I think I was pregnant at the time, so I actually didn't get to work with you. I worked with
there.
one of my,
You
I was
always,
almost about ready to pop.
yeah. No, but you made sure you were there. You took good care of me. But here's
I think the thing is coming in, knowing that you had this background you did, I knew that you would be able to fight this because it's knowing stenosis and knowing that it can get severe. Yes. Like a herniated disc, it can be severe, but there is a period of like this inflammatory phase that has to calm down. And we just have to give our body and space that time. You already are teaching that, really. But now you're dealing with it internally in your own body. And pain sucks. Pain can cause fear. And it's not like the pain you had before. It was, getting beat up or beating yourself up in the gym and having to rest a few days is different than having this like internal attack that you feel it's coming from your core. But because you were already so resilient before, like I have no doubt that you would be ending up in that chronic pain state because you had the tools already to help you get through this. It just took the help though from various professionals to get you on the right path. And that there's a real big strength in asking for help.
Yeah, I mean, it's a choiceless choice, really. If you want to keep moving, for me, it was interesting because of how much I've studied the human mind and what I try to do. In the scariest moment in anyone's life is a sudden, spontaneous, violent encounter. Like in short of something catastrophic medically, like I can't think of anything else and so I've been studying that for years and years and years. And so I had this weird juxtaposition and I was very frustrated with myself that I wasn't more courageous with how I was doing stuff, that I was avoiding it because it was the hardest thing for me. It was ironic is, for 56 years, I've been totally active. And now like I couldn't even go for a walk without having to stop. I couldn't walk down my stairs. I would get out of bed and stand up and, it would take me minutes to go to the bathroom sometimes and it was
debilitating.
Yeah. And that triggered another level of like mental depression where you're like, oh my God. I didn't work out for a year. I mean, I couldn't even just go for just walks just to keep moving. And I started doing all sorts of stuff, trying to do things because you get, at some point, and you got to understand your cycles. I know for me, if something happens, like I know these stages that I'm going to go through. So I can go, oh, okay, I'm going to be pissed off for 2 days and then I'm going to calm down and then I'm going to call these 3 mentors and then and I know that. And so when you know that, and that's coming back to the wall, like you start to go, oh, if I don't pull back or pull over here,
right,
I'm going to hit that wall. And that's the biggest lesson. You can't, you can only share that. You can share it. I can share it. But people are listening going, the fuck they talking about through the wall? Like, I'm good to go. Like, crush it, kill it, man. Like no rest days, go like,
yeah. Well, I think people listening, so far, I haven't even launched this podcast yet, but by the time yours comes out, we'll be well into this. But it's people who've gone through some crazy adversity in their life,
Sure.
whether it's loss of loved ones or permanent injury or temporary.
Yeah.
Um, and
Well,
so I know that you sharing this, like knowing, like there are other people out there who probably are experiencing something similar and feel like
right.
your life is over. So what did help you besides getting care, right? Through
Right.
foundation training, these corrective exercises, like what helped you mentally get to where you are now after that year of feeling like, oh my gosh, like movement is your life. Movement is our
Yeah.
life. What
Yeah.
helped you?
It's tricky because you just go through, like there wasn't like one day, oh, it was
Yeah,
Tuesday on, August that this happened.
sure.
Um, it's give yourself a goal, have a vision, and you try to do a little bit, every day. I found that a lot of the exercises produced an anxiety in me because they were maybe waking up some, trying to move a scar tissue that had just decided I want to hang out here, don't move me. uh, a lot of like breathing exercise, a lot of the foundation work in the beginning gave me crazy anxiety. I'd have to like step out of it and go, whew, and like just like almost do some like breathing, like when you're just finished a sprint. It wasn't even like
Right. Yeah,
cognitive.
yeah.
It was like, get this out of me,
Yeah.
Um, and I found that interesting. And where and one of the blocks in our seminar, we talk about this illusion of fear, and you remember the slogan, no fear. And so we all grow up thinking that if we are exhibiting, demonstrating, experiencing fear, we must be not courageous or trained or prepared. And so this is the biggest reframe that we do. In fact, it's been so potent and so profound that we started a completely other seminar called No Fear, but we spell it KNOW. So it's no fear.
Nice.
And the reframe there is super huge, because the only way that you can use fear as a fuel is if you get to no fear. And that's the real no fear. That fear throttles everything we do in our life. I can look at any situation, whether it's self-defense, a snatch, doing the exercises that you prescribe to somebody. What the degree to which somebody commits to that is, if I peel that onion, it's going to come down to fear. This isn't going to work. It's not going to make the change. Or, I'm not going to live like this. I'm going to do these exercises and make the change.
Right.
And so that was huge. But
Yeah.
the idea is like, you got to do it every day. And there's a great Dan Gable, one of the world's, I don't know, people don't know who Dan Gable is, but one of the greatest wrestlers ever. He said, if it's important, do it every day.
Yeah. Simple consistency.
Do it every day. And we hear that shit, and you might get a tattoo of that. It's on your wall, but you're sitting there, in a shitty position, eating Doritos, watching, Netflix, going,
Yeah.
you got to make your shit happen. And you've got to, you literally have to schedule. Lou Holtz has a great acronym, what's important now. And so it's the acronym WIN. Everyone wants to win, but people don't want to do what's important now. And so it's like, I now, like, as a routine, I would say 97% of my week, I don't get out of bed without doing my breathing, meditating, and listening to a podcast or reading. And I'll do that. Some people go, you just get out of bed and do it. I do that as I wake up. I spend like a half an hour in that. And part of it, if you understood like my back pain and my other stuff like that, I'm on my Tempur-Pedic bed, doing my stuff there. I can't sit up in a chair and meditate. I do it lying down and you find ways to work around your body. But anyways, back to my whole thing is I was up and down. It was a roller coaster ride, where, I'm going, man, I can't, if I can't train, if I can't go teach, if I can't go on the road, like, what am I going to do? It was impacted me so emotionally. It was insane. It was dark, dark, dark. And then on top of that, and I know we discussed whether we would talk about this on the show. I was getting some deep body work, which was a ritual every week. And the guy who's working with me, one of the things we used to do, because my neck was always so injured, we'd go really deep in my neck. And then he would do manual stretches that would really, really help me do that. And we were talking about something, and he went to stretch me, but he had like a momentary lapse of situational awareness where he wasn't watching my breathing. So I was inhaling as he twisted my neck, and it crushed my trigeminal nerve on the left side, and it triggered Bell's palsy on my left side. And so
I did not know that was the.
Yeah. So there's different, if you Google, a lot of people don't even know where it comes from. They think, oh, it's like a virus that you get through your ear, you get an ear.
No, it's paralysis.
But the triggers of it, like on every medical website, they don't know. So there's 2 ways. They think it's a virus, or it's something like structural, physical thing. There's an injury to it. So I remember lying there, him twisting me, and I remember like all of a sudden, like this hot liquid, like a heat that I've never felt in my neck. And I said to myself, that wasn't good. He still doesn't know to this day that it happened, because he didn't do it on purpose. And I'm not one of these pussies that's just I'm going to sue you for, it was an accident. But a week later, like I started that week getting a wicked earache, hot pain. And then I got up one day and my face just started to droop and went completely numb. I went to the hospital, and it was, you sort of like sitting down here, I'm 57 when it happened. I've had it a year now.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you folks, like nerve regeneration doesn't happen very fast,
No.
So, I'm describing this pain in my face, and they're like, any pain down your left arm? And I'm like, no, why? Like, and they're like, because these are some of the like facial paralysis stuff, like stroke, right?
Right.
I'm not even thinking about that. I'm going, what the fuck's wrong with my face?
Right.
They rush me right away to emergency care. We go in, doctor comes in. He says, no, I think you got Bell's palsy. I go, what the hell is that? He goes, da, 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 da. He says, have you ever been hit in the head? So like I finished laughing. I go, like, for 30 years. Yeah. Right. He goes, oh, that, he says, because they've seen it with a lot of like fighters,
right.
which I, because like who knows anything about this unless it afflicts you or a family member, friend. And he says the only way to know for sure is to do a CAT scan. And I'm like, okay, like what do we have to do there? So we're just going to inject some dye in you and then freaking take a look at your brain. So I'm like, oh, and I do not like hospitals. And I'm like,
right.
And so, but what was interesting is it took me 3 months to do the MRI, and I'm like, I don't want to know that I've got a tumor. I don't want to, but 10 minutes later, I'm getting wheeled down. I just said, let's do this. Right. And everything checked out, knock on wood. And, they decided, oh, okay, you got Bell's palsy. It's been about a year. That was the biggest thing, that because I couldn't talk, right. I couldn't brush your teeth. I couldn't chew food properly. And it goes in cycles, with you go through a synkinesis stage where when the nerves grow back, they don't know where to grow. It's not like you're born and they're growing intuitively. So I do all these like nerve exercises, speech therapy, exercises with different parts of my face. And like that, like literally within 2 minutes, you're like, okay, I've had enough of this, because it's like while I'm doing the show, I'm doing exercises. I have to actually like concentrate on articulating certain words a certain way, because the nerves and the muscles aren't firing the same way.
Right.
It's insane.
So
So,
this happened a year ago, roughly.
yeah. So this happened, let's say 6 or 7 months after I got diagnosed with the stenosis. So it was like, I couldn't walk, I couldn't work out. So I didn't have that. And then I was embarrassed to be in public. I mean,
You didn't have your coping. You didn't have your coping.
but, well, yeah, I mean, I couldn't go hit a bag. I couldn't go,
Right.
deadlift. I couldn't go for a run. The hardest thing is like, I make my living doing what we're doing, talking to people,
Right.
consulting with people and they're face to face and seminars. I was doing seminars like all the time. It was for 6 months for me to talk. I actually had to grab my face, pin the muscle to articulate words, so I'd have to like jam my fingers in. And some of to run my business, there were, we do stuff all over the world and I'd have to have like a meeting with people and hey, guess what? I get a nerve injury in my neck and I got to do this in my face. And I would do the stuff and I would show up, but the stress that it caused,
Yeah.
it's insane. And it's like someone who doesn't know me might look at me and go, I don't know what's he talking about.
Right.
The sensations I have in my face right now, like if I wasn't, like I don't feel normal. But it's so much better, and it could be so many worse things. Like when it's happening to you, I always make this joke. When you stub your toe, and you're like, oh, my fucking toe, and you're screaming, like there's nothing you can do about it. Shut up, right?
Right.
But when it's happening to you, that's the worst thing at that moment. So, for people going through pain and stuff like that, it's really about managing your fear. At the end of it, we where I said, if this is the best that it gets, this is better than a million other things that could be going on. The same with my body. So like with the help of you, a dear friend in Montreal, who does a whole bunch of other crazy body movement stuff, Erik Goodman, everyone who's touched my body, cranial, deep tissue, acupuncture, you ultimately trust your intuition and go, okay, like it's all that parasympathetic thing. It's like, hey, am I more relaxed? Do I feel like this is moving me towards safety? And so I'm back, in the last 6 months, I can walk. I walk. I've started light running again, shadow boxing. I get a little crazy. Like if I hit a bag, I move too hard, and my nerves don't like that.
Right.
But I'm moving again, and that it's so crazy. I wish somebody had told me. And you might have said this, but you block it out. It's going to take you a year, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And when someone tells you that, when you want this instant gratification, like, no, like you're like, touch me somewhere and make me better.
Yeah.
If somebody told me like in a year and a half from now, I could walk, I'd do like interval training. I can't run for long distances, but I can do like little nice, like not too crazy, but sprinting. Like I feel like alive and active again. I'm teaching, I can demo. I got to watch out I don't get hit in the head.
Yeah.
But if someone had told me that a year and a half ago, I know, because I'm a little bitch, I'd have gone, why so long? Like, because I'm used to, but that would have helped me. And I have no doubt that you and Erik and everyone told me that, but you don't hear it when you're looking for like that secret, that panacea, cure all.
Well, I think everyone who's gone through, like you went through, so some people it's an accident and then their lives change completely. And then there's the months, some not so long, some months, years of getting used to this new normal. And part of that is overcoming the fear, accepting where they are and choosing to be optimal in this new state. But for some of us, it's like you, like your life though was wrapped up in training and teaching and moving, and all of a sudden you couldn't do those things. So that's that, there's a fear of providing, there's a fear of, how long is this going to last? And you can look it up on Google, you can have people tell you it, but when you're experiencing your body, that pain every day, it does something to you. And I was interviewing an individual who lost 13 people in 2 years. So it's like constant loss of people close to him. And what got him up every day was grit. It's just like, yeah, it sucked. Like, it sucks waking up. It sucks being in pain. It sucks having these crazy injuries. They're going to happen to some of us, some more than others. And yeah, you're going to maybe go through periods of darkness, but what's the grit that you had before that injury is still there.
Right.
Like, it's still there. It's getting you up. And then now, even though your body is different, you're now able to start to do what you used to do, but now it's a little different the way you do it. You're a little bit more, not necessarily cautious, but aware.
Mm-hmm.
It's made you more aware of, getting hit in the head, with the way I work with a lot of people with brain injuries, lots of multiple concussions, right? Especially on the Navy SEAL side of things. Like, it's more, nobody needs more concussions, right? And so being aware of that and being aware of posture, how you hold yourself and how often you train as we age. Like, I'm aware of now, like, not killing myself every day in the gym. I'm not really training for any event at the moment. I'm training to just be like a strong mom and be actually really healthy up here. And I mean, everyone should be doing that, but it's like, I care more about this at the moment. But through physical fitness, I find I build strength here. But I know that I can't beat myself up every day like I used to in my 20s, and I don't want to. But I think so you went through something that maybe stenosis is a more common injury, but the way it affects people is different. But your lifestyle relied on your body and your mind and being able to talk. So you had to like shift things quite a bit.
That was that was the hardest thing for me, because it was suddenly my canvas was public speaking and helping people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went, well, I can't demo, I can't move, but I could still talk. And then when the neck injury happened, it's like, oh, now I can't even talk. I mean, when this happened, I could not enunciate. I could not articulate. My favorite word is serendipity. I could not say serendipity. But I will tell you this, totally humbling and introduced me to things. And I want to shout out to my good friend, Brian McKenzie, at the height of when all this was happening, where I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, I couldn't speak. It was insane. I mean, I started getting and I never had this, like, wicked panic attacks. And Brian and I would always just text every so often, but we hadn't spoken in a long time. And I bumped into a good friend of his, and I was telling him, man, I'm like going through this stuff. And he says, have you spoken to Brian? Because he's, his whole art of breath thing might help with some of the breathing protocols. So I immediately texted him, and he, he was crazy busy doing some stuff. And he said, hey, I'll call you in 2 weeks, when I'm back from this. And I said, okay, if your schedule opens up sooner, let me know, which is something I've never, in the 10 years I've known him. Right. So he called me right away, because he knew, like, that was a clue. And like, in my car outside of a restaurant, he put me through this breathing protocol, and I was like, wicked anxiety. I was like losing it was like everything had someone just said, hey, you're not Tony Blauer anymore, and you're not going to continue to do what you're doing. And we don't know what you're going to do, but just going to, like, hang out here just in pain, stand around and look in the mirror. It was insane. And I want to say you opened up your mind and your skill set to me. Erik did, a bunch of other people. And the one thing that changed everything the most dramatically was reconnecting to how important breathing is.
Yeah.
And I did a podcast with Brian on our No Fear podcast, which you'll have to come back on now, is I had always taken breathing for granted, as we all do, even though as I think it was Rob said at the seminar, it's the first thing you do, it's the last thing you do.
Yeah.
But we just breathe, for however long we breathe, and then we stop breathing. But most people, other than people who actually actively practice breathing, don't think about breathing intentionally,
right?
Like you do, like I do now. And I never thought about that. And my aerobic capacity was insane from all the fighting I'm doing, because it's all anaerobic, running, training, all this stuff. And when Brian explained to me, some of what was going on as far as state changes in parasympathetic and sympathetic and all, and gave, he said, read these 2 books as soon as you can. There's a Norman Deutsch books on the brain's way of healing. Mm-hmm. But literally in 3 days, my anxiety dissipated within 3 days of it. Now, part of that is like what you were talking about, you had like 50 years of grit and tenacity and resilience built up in other stuff. And so, but at the end of the day, what you need to do is just singularly focus on this. And the way I described it is I would tell people that in an article I wrote in 1993 called Presumed Compliance. And I wrote this for the law enforcement military community. And one of the lines in there is how we think affects how we feel affects how we think, both influence how we move. Mm-hmm. So how you feel changes how you think. Mm-hmm. And then that's going to change how you move, and vice versa. Because you can have a bad thought that creates a bad feeling, and that tightens your body up. And then after doing the work with Brian, I went, wow. And I added to that, how we feel affects how we think, but how we breathe affects how we feel, and how we breathe affects how we think. Mm-hmm. To continue with this mini tangent, in a sudden violent encounter, you don't have time to think about your feelings and what you think about this shit, or even to regulate your breathing. And that's a big misconception with people and stuff like that, is confusing the practice of martial arts with defending yourself in a sudden violent encounter.
Right.
And so you can, if you're a SWAT team in a stack outside of a house, you can do some superventilation. You can do some intelligence, as long as it's not too loud and you don't betray the element of surprise. But you can do some breathing, like while you're in the chopper on the way to a mission, and get your shit together, right, and then trust that your training and your team are going to do the right thing. But if I'm at an ATM and I'm getting money and I turn around and there's a gun on my face, a knife in my face, or somebody hits me, I don't have time to go, okay, I'm going to do some like left nose.
Right.
Yeah. And so I just say that you got to understand the context, but the one thing that gave me more perspective and energy to do things that you would tell me or what Erik would tell me was having done the breathing first to change me into a parasympathetic state where I could say, it's time to do some work on your body, where I didn't notice that heighten. And that's so the one big thing I tell anybody listening, if you're struggling with making that next move, is it starts with your breathing. It really does.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that too, Tony, because that's something that has been a huge game changer for me in my life too. And that's why I love the art of breath, because it was like speaking my language. I teach about it I do it with people in my online courses, but programs, but I also do it in my practice. However, I don't get a chance. I mean, I spend an hour with someone, mm-hmm. And it's usually centered around movement. The way someone breathes matters, but that personal practice I have is very much centered around that, diving into that parasympathetic state, because I know, having struggled with depression before, as well as anxiety, I still have anxieties that come up, like being a mom, running a business, and sure, managing all these things that I'm managing. The breath helps me slow down so I make better decisions, and allows the problems don't go away. They just become easier to deal with. And also just my overall outlook on my life and myself. It's a way to connect with my soul, actually. And for a long time in my life, I wasn't doing that. It's like Rob said, it's the remote control for the brain. So I now have a much more understanding of my vastness that I can offer the world. And the way I want to put myself out into the world is much different than it was a few years ago, because I now have a regular breath practice. It's like I'm much more protective of how I spend my time, who I spend it with. Don't fuck around anymore. There is a time and space for that, but I'm much more aware of, this is going to be too much energy for me. This is going to be too much time away from my family. This isn't going to be good for my soul. This person isn't good for my soul anymore. They need to go. That's what the breath work has done for me. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's a great place I appreciate you sharing your journey about this crazy couple of years, because it's very vulnerable, I know, in the state you're in, but you're not the only, you're one of many leaders that I know have gone through something like this, but a lot of people aren't willing to share it. And I think your ability to get on camera and share this will allow other people to open up and actually get the help they need versus holding it in, because that only is life defeating. So I think that's a good place to say goodbye to everyone.
Yeah.
But I want to leave people, if you have any bit of advice for someone you gave some such great golden nuggets in this podcast, Tony, but like if there was one piece of advice you would give someone who's just recently diagnosed with stenosis or Bell's palsy, or not even diagnosed yet, but is experiencing like severe low back pain, what would you give them?
I mean, the most important thing, I touched on it earlier, is to recognize that the more you run from your pain because of fear, the more you intensify it, because what it does is it kind of like amplifies and triggers all of the other protective reactions in the body that end up cascading into something else. That the sooner, and this comes back to manage your fear and just accept. So we have, like, when we're doing our self-defense stuff, we talk about the 3 golden rules. The first golden rule is acceptance. The second one is to get challenged. The third one is to don't stop thinking, exploring in this case. So, but you can't get challenged and go, okay, I'm going to go through this because it's a choiceless choice, if you don't accept what's happening. So if in the back of your mind, you're still saying, I don't believe this happened to me, I don't believe this happened to me, you're not going to hear anybody's strategy or a solution. And the other thing is, we full circle, beginning of the show, it takes a village, like Erik said. So learn more about managing fear. Eliminate the illusion of no fear, no fear, and reframe it as, I've got to get to no fear, I got to know fear, KNOW fear.
Like it.
And explore that. We have an acronym for it. It's face it, understand it, confront it, and then know it. Face it, understand it, confront it, know it. FUCK. Fuck fear. And
I love it. Well, I'll make sure to add the seminars you teach, so the No Fear seminar, to show notes for people, so they know how to get a hold of you. Is there another, besides your seminars, is there another way people can find out more about you?
Yeah, I mean, if you Google, I've been around for 40 years, so if you just Google, a whole bunch of shit will come up online. But our website is Blauer Spear, BLAUER Spear. And then what we did, in the same way that you were compelled to create online education because people are restricted financially, geographically, and so on and so forth. The same thing with me. We put out a 90-minute, the keynote presentation I do on No Fear. We recorded it in a studio with the slides, so people can actually sit there at their own leisure and listen to that. Because I really believe at the end of the day that if we taught, like, think about if you had grown up, if I had grown up and been taught the difference between the psychology of fear and the biology of fear and the physiology of fear, that somebody telling me that, fight, flight, or freeze is your fear response, but that doesn't help me navigate life.
Right.
Right. That's behaviors you observe after the fact. Right. So, and there's a big difference. Again, the getting to know fear concept is that if I understand the psychology, the neural circuitry of fear, of how a stimulus gets introduced and triggers a fear loop, and I need to get out of that fear loop. But when I understand how to do that, I've empowered myself.
Right.
I mean, to me, that's the secret to everything, is managing.
Well, you're speaking my language, Tony. I come at it from the physical therapy piece, mental resilience side of it. I mean, it's the way like I said, the way I teach it is about the lead you first, understanding the way your body, the way breath actually works. It's not just, you breathe in and a miracle happens and you breathe out. I teach about vulnerability and elasticity, the beauty of elasticity, neuroplasticity in the brain, and then the way the tissues can change. I think it's super powerful for people to know that change is possible, because they're not necessarily going to get that from their doctor, because they're going to get surgery, meds. And so the way we talk about fear is through acceptance of where you're at, but knowing there's power in things you can do daily to help yourself heal, but you're still going to need help. So it's really awesome to hear the commonality, but just like hear the way you've come at it, because that's ultimately is what got you here today speaking about it, even with this crazy couple years, which I can only imagine has been very hard. So, and one of the big takeaways I've gotten from other people that I've interviewed too is the empathy now that they feel for those who are in pain. It's like before it was like, just suck it up, buttercup, or what are you complaining about? It's like, no, this is a real experience. Like, give them their space. They're going through something, respect that, but here are tools to help you. And the things that you're teaching in your, I love all my adaptive athletes to take your courses, actually. Be pretty sick. So we'll talk about that. But thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate you. And say hi to that lovely wife of yours.
I will.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Teresa.